The Syndicate enforcement fleet arrived exactly on schedule, 3 ships arranged in standard intimidation formation. They were sleek and new, painted in corporate colors, bristling with weapons designed to discourage resistance. The lead ship's captain opened a communication channel expecting immediate surrender. Instead, he found himself facing a communication screen filled with the unshaven face of a human mechanic who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Waypoint Tethys. This is Syndicate Enforcement Captain Velcor. You are harboring stolen corporate property. Surrender the Quilvan specimens immediately, and you will not be harmed. You have 5 minutes to comply. Jinho took a sip of coffee before answering. Define stolen property. The Quilvan females currently on your station. They are contracted research subjects who failed to report to their assigned facility. Interesting legal theory. Tell me, Captain Velcor, do your research subjects usually sign their own contracts? Because I've looked through your paperwork and I don't see any Quilvan signatures. Just a ship captain who sold them without their knowledge or consent. Pretty sure that's called trafficking in most civilized systems. Velcor's face darkened. Your opinion on contract law is irrelevant. Surrender the property or we will take it by force. See, that's where we have a problem. Jinho leaned forward. Because you're not taking anyone from this station. And if you try, you're going to have a very bad day. Velcor actually laughed. You're one human on a dying station with no weapons and no support. We have 3 military-grade vessels and trained soldiers. Your resistance is pointless, is it though? Jinho smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Might want to check your sensors again. On Velcor's tactical display, new contacts began appearing. 1 ship, then 5, then 20. They dropped out of hyperspace in a loose formation around Waypoint Tethys, a mismatched collection of cargo haulers, mining vessels, personal fighters, and patched-together defense platforms. None of them looked military. All of them had weapons pointed at the Syndicate fleet. What is this? Velcor demanded. This is what happens when you threaten someone humans have decided to protect. Jinho said calmly. These are independent traders, mechanics, salvagers, and miners. They came from 12 different systems in the past 3 days. None of them know the Quilvans personally. But all of them are really angry about what your corporation is doing. They're civilians with cargo ships. They're no match for military vessels. Maybe not in a fair fight. But humans don't really do fair fights when we're angry. Jinho glanced at something off-screen. Also, you might want to know that over the past 3 days I've rewired this entire station into one big bomb. If your ships open fire, Waypoint Tethys turns into a very large explosion. We're close enough that you'll be caught in the blast radius. So you've got a choice. Leave peacefully or die here. Velcor stared at him. You're bluffing. You wouldn't destroy your own station, wouldn't I? Jinho's expression went flat and cold. I left Earth because I got tired of watching corporations exploit people. I came out here to get away from all that. And now you're bringing it right to my door, threatening people I've sworn to protect. So yeah, I'll blow this station to pieces before I let you take them. Only question is whether you believe me or not. There was a long silence. Then one of the civilian ships, a battered mining vessel, moved forward aggressively, its weapons powered up with a whine that was clearly audible over the communication channel. This is the Taiyang's hammer, a woman's voice said in accented English. Just so we're clear, if you try to board that station, we're ramming your lead ship. I've got a reactor that's held together with tape and prayer. It'll make a real pretty explosion. Another ship moved forward, Red Phoenix standing by. My crew includes 3 former Earth military. We know exactly where to shoot to disable your engines without killing anyone, but we're flexible on the not killing part if you push us. More voices joined in. A chorus of humans identifying themselves and their ships, each one promising escalating levels of violence if the Syndicate didn't leave. Some of the promises were creative enough to make Jinho wince. You see, Captain Velcor, Jinho said quietly, humans have this problem. We pack bond with other species. We adopt aliens like they're lost puppies. It's weird, it's irrational, and it drives other species crazy. But once we decide someone is ours, we get real protective. And these Quilvans? We've decided they're ours now. Velcor's face had gone pale. This is insane. You're risking your lives for aliens you don't even know. Yeah, Jinho agreed. That's kind of what we do. It's a whole thing. Before Velcor could respond, alarms started blaring on his bridge. One of his ships reported weapons lock from multiple vectors. Another reported strange energy readings from the station itself. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, and his 3 military vessels were suddenly surrounded by 40 angry humans who seemed perfectly willing to die taking the syndicate down with them. "This isn't over," Velcor said finally. "The corporation will not forget this." "Good," Jinho said. "We're counting on it, because every time you come after these people, we're going to be here. Every time you try to kidnap another Quilvan, we're going to know about it, and we're going to stop you. Humans are real good at holding grudges, Captain. Real good." The syndicate ships held position for another tense minute. Then slowly they began backing away. They turned and jumped to hyperspace, leaving nothing but distorted space and empty threats behind. The communication channels exploded with cheering. Humans whooped and laughed and called out to each other, celebrating their victory. Jinho slumped in his chair, exhausted and relieved and slightly amazed that his insane plan had actually worked. A hand touched his shoulder. He looked up to find Bora standing there, her eyes wide and wondering. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually made them leave." "We did it," Jinho corrected. "All of us. They'll come back, probably, but next time we'll be ready." He stood up, his legs shaky from 3 days of no sleep and too much coffee. "Come on, we should thank everyone." They went to the docking bay where the other Quilvans had been hiding during the confrontation, 17 frightened aliens who'd spent the past days not knowing if they'd live or die. When they saw Bora and Jinho, they rushed forward, all talking at once, asking questions and crying and hugging each other. Through the bay windows, the human ships were visible, still maintaining protective formation around the station. Some of them were already docking, their crews wanting to meet the people they'd come to save. A young Quilvan female, barely more than a child, approached Jinho shyly. "Why did the humans help us? We're nothing to them." Jinho knelt down so he was at her eye level. "You're not nothing. You're people who needed help. That's all the reason humans need. But they could have died. Yeah, that's kind of the point." He smiled. "Humans are weird. We get attached to people real easy, and once we care about someone, we'll do stupid, dangerous things to keep them safe. It doesn't always make sense, but it's who we are." The young Quilvan stared at him for a moment, then suddenly hugged him tightly. Jinho froze, surprised, then carefully hugged her back. When he looked up, he saw Bora watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. That night, after all the humans had docked and met the Quilvans they'd saved, Bora organized a feast. She and the other Quilvan cooks worked together, creating dishes that celebrated every species present, the station's common area filled with the smell of food and the sound of laughter. Humans and Quilvans sharing stories and becoming friends. Jinho watched from the doorway, too tired to join but too happy to leave. Bora found him there and stood beside him, their shoulders touching. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "About what? When we first met, I told you I was too chubby to be loved. I said I was only good for cooking." She turned to look at him. "But you showed me different. You saw past what I look like. You protected me even when it was dangerous. You called me family." "You are family," Jinho said simply. "I know that now." She took his hand, her furry palm warm against his skin. "Thank you, Jinho, for everything. Thank you for making food that tastes like home, and for reminding me why I became a mechanic in the first place. Why's that? To fix things that are broken." He squeezed her hand gently. "Turns out that includes systems bigger than just ships." They stood together, watching their makeshift family celebrate their unlikely victory, while outside the station window, human ships kept watch over the stars. The cargo hauler's data core sat on Jinho's workbench like a sleeping metal spider. He'd been putting off this repair for 2 weeks, partly because data recovery was tedious work, and partly because something about the whole situation bothered him. Captains didn't usually abandon their ships and crews unless something was seriously wrong. The more he thought about it, the less sense it made. He connected the core to his diagnostic system and started the recovery process. Most of the files were routine, boring ship's logs and maintenance records. Then he found the encrypted folder. That was interesting. Cargo haulers didn't usually need military-grade encryption. Jinho glanced at the bay door, made sure he was alone, and launched his decryption program. It took 3 hours and several cups of Bora's coffee, but eventually the files opened. What he found made his blood run cold. The first document was a contract between the hauler's captain and something called the Vorten Syndicate. The language was deliberately vague, but the meaning was clear enough. The captain had agreed to transport cargo to a facility in the outer reaches. The cargo was listed as research specimens. The payment was enormous, enough to buy a new ship twice over. The second document was a manifest. It listed names, species, genetic markers, and estimated values. Jinho scrolled through the list, his stomach tightening with each entry. Quilvan females, all of them. 20 names total. Bora's name was third from the top. The third document was the worst. It was a research proposal from something called the Universal Nutrition Corporation. They wanted to study Quilvan genetic markers related to food synthesis, not to help the Quilvans, but to extract and patent the genes, to create artificial enzymes that could be mass-produced and sold. The proposal casually mentioned that the research subjects would not survive the extraction process. Jinho sat back from the screen, his hands shaking. He'd heard rumors about corporations doing things like this, targeting alien species with valuable biological traits, but seeing it laid out so clinically, so casually, like these were products instead of people, made him want to hit something. There was more. The fourth document was a bounty list, distributed across multiple criminal networks. It offered rewards for Quilvan individuals with specific genetic profiles. Master chefs, they called them. Individuals who carried ancient culinary knowledge in their genes. Bora's profile showed the highest bounty on the entire list. The final document was a message from the Vortan Syndicate dated 3 days ago. It confirmed that enforcement teams were being dispatched to Waypoint Tethys to collect overdue cargo. Estimated arrival was in 4 days. Jinho saved everything to a secure drive and destroyed the original data core. Then he sat in his workshop trying to decide what to do. He could pretend he never saw any of this, let Bora and the others get taken, save himself the trouble and danger. But he'd already told Bora she was family. And Jinho didn't abandon family. He found her in the kitchen preparing dinner for the station's current residents. She smiled when she saw him, then frowned at his expression. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk. Somewhere private." They went to his quarters. Jinho locked the door and showed her everything he'd found. He watched her face as she read, saw the confusion turn to horror, then to a kind of numb acceptance that hurt worse than any screaming would have. When she finished reading, she sat very still for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "I knew something was wrong. The captain kept us separate from the other cargo. He said it was for our safety, but I could see how he looked at us. Like we were products he needed to deliver intact." Her voice cracked. "How many of us are still alive?" "According to this, 17 Quilvans are still on the station, counting you. The others were already delivered to different facilities." Bora's hands clenched into fists. "My sister was on this ship. She was taken to a facility on Kilos Prime 2 months ago. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just tell me honestly. Is there anything we can do? Or should I just accept that this is how my story ends?" Jinho looked at her. This kind person who'd fed him and cared for strangers and asked for nothing but basic respect. He thought about his grandmother, about the people back on Earth who'd stood up against corporate exploitation, about the promise he'd made to himself when he left, that he'd never stand by and watch injustice happen again. "We're not accepting anything," he said firmly. "We're going to fight back." "How?" "We have 4 days and no weapons. The Syndicate has enforcement ships and trained soldiers. We have something better. We have time to prepare. We have a station full of systems I know inside and out, and we have connections." Jinho pulled up his communication console. "I know people, Bora. Humans scattered across this sector. Mechanics, traders, salvagers. People who hate corporations and love a good fight. If I send out the right message, they'll come. Why would they risk their lives for Quilvans they've never met? Because humans are weird about things like this. We get attached to other species in ways that don't make sense. We see injustice and we get angry about it even when it's not our problem. It's a flaw maybe, or maybe it's the one thing we're actually good at." Bora stared at him. "You're serious? You're actually going to fight the Syndicate?" "We're going to fight them," Jinho corrected. "This affects your people, so you get a say in how we handle it. First thing we need to do is warn the other Quilvans on the station, get them somewhere safe. Then we start preparing defenses. I don't know how to fight. Neither do most of the people I'm going to call, but we know how to be stubborn, and we know how to make things explode when necessary." He started typing a message, choosing his words carefully. "Trust me on this. Humans might not be the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, But we're probably the most unreasonably stubborn when we decide to protect someone. Bora watched him work for a moment, then moved to stand beside him. What can I do? Keep cooking. Keep everyone fed. When people fight, they need fuel. And your food does more than fill stomachs. It reminds people what they're fighting for. Home, family, the right to exist without being turned into a corporate product. She nodded slowly. I can do that. Jinho sent his message out across every channel he had access to. It was simple and direct. He explained what was happening, what was at stake, and what he needed. Then he added one line at the end, knowing it would matter to the humans who received it. They're killing them for their genes. They're erasing an entire species for profit. I can't stop this alone, but maybe we can stop it together. He hit send and looked at Bora. Now we wait and see who answers. The first response came 30 minutes later, then another, then 10 more. By midnight, Jinho had 43 confirmations from humans across the sector, all promising to come. Some were bringing weapons, some were bringing ships, all of them were bringing anger and determination, and that uniquely human willingness to fight impossible odds for people they'd never met. Bora read the messages over his shoulder, tears running down her furry cheeks. I don't understand humans. Most species don't, Jinho admitted. We barely understand ourselves. But right now I'm glad we're this way. Me too, Bora whispered. Me too. The smell hit Jinho before he even reached the kitchen. His feet stopped moving and his eyes closed as he breathed in deep. It smelled like his grandmother's kitchen back in Busan, like Sunday mornings and family gatherings and everything good about home that he'd left behind. He quickened his pace, almost running the last few meters. Bora stood at the cooking station, her back to him, stirring something in a large pot. She'd tied her fur back somehow, keeping it away from the food. Steam rose around her like a cloud, and the kitchen was warm and alive in a way it had never been before. She turned when she heard his footsteps and smiled nervously. Good morning, sir. I hope you're hungry. What is that? Jinho asked, moving closer to peer into the pot. Sit down first, she said, her voice carrying a hint of command that surprised them both. Then softer, please. Let me serve you properly. Jinho sat at the small table he'd barely used in 5 years. A moment later, Bora placed a bowl in front of him. The contents looked like a stew, rich and dark with chunks of what appeared to be vegetables and protein. Next to it, she set down a small plate of what looked almost exactly like kimchi. This isn't possible, Jinho said, staring at the food. These ingredients aren't in storage. I know what we have. Everything you see came from the storage bay, Bora said quietly. I synthesized the flavors. That's what Quilvins do. We understand how molecules interact to create taste. I can't make something from nothing, but I can transform what exists into what's needed. She wrung her hands nervously. I hope it tastes right. I've never cooked for a human before. Jinho picked up the spoon and tasted the stew. The flavor exploded across his tongue, complex and layered and so perfectly right that his throat went tight. It tasted exactly like the doenjang jjigae his grandmother used to make. He tried the kimchi next, and it had that perfect balance of spicy and sour and funky that only came from proper fermentation. How? He managed to ask after swallowing. Bora sat down across from him, watching his face anxiously. I asked you questions yesterday, remember? About where you're from, what you miss, what comfort means to you. You mentioned a grandmother, a city by the ocean, specific words for foods. I researched Earth's Korean peninsula in the station's database last night. Found historical records of traditional dishes. Then I analyzed the molecular composition of those dishes and worked backward, figuring out how to recreate similar compounds from available ingredients. You did this in one night? I don't need much sleep. And this is what I love, sir. Creating food that means something. Food that tells a story. She paused. Is it acceptable? Does it taste like home? Jinho couldn't speak for a moment. He just nodded and kept eating, and he didn't care that his eyes were wet. Bora seemed to understand. She quietly excused herself and busied herself with cleaning, giving him privacy. After that first breakfast, everything changed. Word spread quickly through the station. Other stranded crew members started showing up at the kitchen, drawn by the smells. Bora fed them all, asking each person about their home, their memories, their comfort foods. Within 3 days, she was cooking meals that made a Vrelian warrior cry and a Tellurian trader laugh with joy for the first time in months. Jinho watched it happen from his repair bay. He saw how Bora transformed when she was cooking. The nervous, apologetic alien who called herself too chubby disappeared. In her place stood someone confident and powerful, someone who understood exactly what she was doing and why it mattered. She moved through the kitchen like a dancer, efficient and graceful, her round body perfectly suited to the constant motion of cooking. But he also saw how she changed when she wasn't cooking, how she made herself small when walking through corridors, how she flinched when certain aliens made comments about her appearance, how she apologized for taking up space, for existing, for breathing. It made him angry in a way he hadn't felt since leaving Earth. One afternoon, while Jinho was replacing a power coupling, two Tellurian traders walked past his bay. They were talking loudly, not caring who heard. "Did you see the fat Quilvan in the kitchen, rolling around like a ball of dough? I heard they're paying her in food scraps. Appropriate considering that's all her species is good for. Eating and cooking. At least she's useful for something." They laughed, harsh and cruel. Jinho's hands tightened around his wrench. He stepped out of the bay and called after them. "Hey!" They turned, surprised. "What? That Quilvan has a name. It's Bora. And she's the reason you've been eating real food instead of ration paste for the past week. Show some respect or find another station." The taller Tellurian puffed up his chest. "You threatening us, human?" "No threat. Just information. This is my station. I decide who docks here. Right now I'm deciding you're not welcome." Jinho kept his voice level and cold. "Your ship's repairs are done. Pay your bill and leave." The Tellurians looked shocked, then angry, then uncertain. Finally, they muttered something and walked away. Jinho returned to his work, his heart pounding. He didn't notice Bora standing at the corner of the corridor, watching him with wide eyes. That evening, she knocked on his quarters. When he opened the door, she was holding a tray with tea and small sweet cakes. "May I come in, sir?" "You don't have to call me sir," Jinho said, stepping aside to let her enter. "Jinho is fine." "Jinho," she said, testing the name. She set the tray down on his small table. "I heard what you said to those traders today. They were being disrespectful. People are always disrespectful to Quilvans. We're considered one of the ugly species. Fat, slow, useless for anything except cooking." She looked down at her hands. "I've heard worse things than what they said." "Much worse. That doesn't make it right." "No," she agreed quietly. "But it makes your defense of me unusual. No one has ever done that before." She lifted her eyes to meet his. "Why did you?" "I'm just your cook. You don't owe me protection." Jinho thought about his answer carefully. "Where I come from, we have a saying. If you share food with someone, their family, you've been feeding everyone on this station like we matter, like we're worth the effort. That makes you family, far as I'm concerned, and I protect my family." Bora's eyes went very wide and very wet. "But we barely know each other. Doesn't matter. You're a good person trying to survive in a galaxy that treats you like garbage. I know what that feels like." He poured tea for both of them. "Besides, you make incredible food. I'd be an idiot to let people chase you away." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Then she did something that surprised him. She reached across the table and put her small furry hand on his. "Thank you, Jinho, for seeing me as more than what others say I am. Thank you for making breakfast taste like home." They sat like that for a while, drinking tea and eating sweet cakes while outside the station window, stars wheeled slowly through the endless dark. The wrench slipped from Jinho's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He cursed under his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The cooling system of the Vrelian transport ship had been giving him trouble for 3 hours now, and his patience was running thin. Outside the repair bay window, stars dotted the endless black of space like scattered salt on a dark table. Waypoint Tethys wasn't much to look at. The orbital station had seen better days, probably decades ago. Now it was just a floating collection of rusted metal and flickering lights, sitting at the edge of explored space where nobody important ever came. That was fine with Jinho. He'd left Earth 5 years ago after telling his corporate bosses exactly what they could do with their exploitation contracts. Out here, he fixed ships, minded his own business, and didn't have to answer to anyone. The proximity alarm beeped twice. Jinho glanced at the monitor and saw a cargo hauler limping toward the docking ring. The ship looked rough with scorch marks along its hull and one engine sputtering like a dying animal. He sighed and set down his tools. Another job. Another group of desperate travelers who probably couldn't pay. 20 minutes later, Jinho stood at the docking bay entrance as the hauler's door hissed open. The crew stumbled out, a mixed group of aliens from at least 4 different species. They looked exhausted and scared. A tall Vrelian with blue skin spoke first, demanding to know the repair costs. When Jinho told him, the Vrelian's face went dark. He shouted something in his own language, then stormed back into the ship. The other crew members scattered quickly, leaving one figure standing alone near the door. She was short and round, covered in soft gray fur that looked like velvet. Her large eyes were dark and wet, and her small hands twisted nervously in front of her belly. Jinho recognized her species immediately. Quilvan. He'd met one before years ago, back when he was still working the corporate routes. She walked toward him slowly, each step careful, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear her. "Excuse me, sir. The captain. He said he can't pay for repairs. He said we're on our own now." Jinho frowned. "He's abandoning you here?" She nodded, looking down at her feet. "He took whatever money was left and sealed himself in the bridge. The docking fees alone will empty our accounts. We have nothing left." "That's illegal," Jinho said flatly. "Many things are illegal, sir. That doesn't stop them from happening." Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd learned this lesson too many times. "I was wondering. I know I can't pay you with money, but maybe I could work off the debt? I can clean the station or organize storage or—" "What did you do on the ship?" Jinho asked. She hesitated, her ears drooping. "I was the cook, sir. Any good at it?" Her eyes widened slightly. Yes, sir. I'm very good at it, but I understand that's not useful for ship repairs. I just thought maybe, can you work with station rations? The compressed stuff in the storage bay? I can work with anything, sir. That's what Quilvans do. We understand food at a molecular level. Give me basic ingredients and I can make something that tastes like home." She paused, then added quietly, "But I should tell you something first. I'm not what most species consider attractive. I'm too chubby to be loved, sir. I know how I look, but I can cook. That's all I'm good for, really." Jinho studied her for a long moment. Her shoulders were hunched, her whole body language screaming that she expected rejection or mockery. He'd seen that posture before, on humans who'd been beaten down by life until they forgot their own worth. "I don't care what you look like," he said simply. "I've been eating ration bars for 6 months and I'm sick of them. You can cook, I can fix ships. Seems like a fair trade to me." She blinked up at him, confusion clear on her furry face. You don't mind that I'm fat?" "Why would I mind? You're offering to cook, not model clothing." Jinho shrugged. "Besides, different species have different ideas about bodies. On Earth, there's no single standard. Never understood why anyone cares so much about that stuff anyway." For the first time, something like hope flickered in her expression. "You really mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean. Waste of time." He gestured toward the station's interior. "Kitchen's 2 levels up. Storage bay is 1 level down. I'll show you where everything is. What's your name?" "Bora," she said softly. "Jinho. Come on, I'll give you the tour." As they walked through the station's narrow corridors, Bora seemed to relax slightly. She asked questions about the station's layout, about what foods he liked, about dietary restrictions. Jinho answered honestly, surprised by how thorough her questions were. She wasn't just asking about taste preferences. She wanted to know about his health, his work schedule, his energy needs. The kitchen was small and outdated, but Bora's eyes lit up when she saw it. She ran her furry hands over the cooking surfaces, tested the heat controls, checked the ventilation. Then she asked to see the storage bay. When Jinho opened the storage bay door, even he had to admit it looked grim. Rows of gray containers holding compressed protein blocks, dehydrated vegetables, synthetic nutrients. Food designed for efficiency, not enjoyment. Bora walked between the shelves, picking up containers and sniffing them, her nose twitching. "This is perfect," she said. Jinho raised an eyebrow. "Perfect?" "It's barely food. It's ingredients," Bora corrected him. "Everything is ingredients if you know how to use it. Tomorrow morning, come to the kitchen before you start work. I'll make you breakfast. You don't have to start right away. You must be exhausted from the journey." She shook her head firmly. "A deal is a deal, sir. You're giving me shelter and safety. The least I can do is feed you properly." That night, Jinho lay in his quarters thinking about the strange turn his day had taken. He'd expected another routine repair job. Instead, he'd acquired a cook, rescued an abandoned alien, and made a deal based on nothing but mutual need. From somewhere in the station, he could smell something cooking. Something that smelled like spices and warmth and actual food. His stomach growled in anticipation. Maybe, he thought as he drifted off to sleep, this arrangement might work out better than expected. The convoy of ships traveled in silence through hyperspace. 17 Quilvan refugees and their human escorts heading toward a hidden colony in the Peridia system. Jinho sat in the cockpit of his own ship, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel, when Bora entered carrying 2 cups of tea. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." She settled into the co-pilot seat, something she'd been doing more often during their journey. "I keep thinking about what happens next. We saved everyone on the station, but there are Quilvans scattered across dozens of systems. My sister's still out there, probably in some corporate lab. We'll find her," Jinho promised. "Once we get everyone settled at the colony, we can start searching." Bora was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need to tell you something. The truth about what I am. You're a cook. I'm more than that." She set down her tea and took a breath. "I'm what my people call a keeper of tastes. It's genetic, passed down through specific family lines. We don't just understand food on a molecular level. We remember it. Every dish our ancestors ever tasted, going back hundreds of generations. It's stored in our genes somehow, accessible through meditation and practice." Jinho turned to look at her. "That's incredible. That's why the corporation wants us so badly. A keeper of tastes can recreate any dish from any culture, even cultures that no longer exist. We're living libraries of culinary history." Her voice dropped. "When I made you that Korean stew on our first morning together, I wasn't just researching and guessing. I was accessing genetic memories from a Quilvan who visited Earth 200 years ago. She met a family in a place called Busan and they fed her. The memory of that meal has been carried through my family line ever since." "The taste was perfect," Jinho said softly. "Exactly like my grandmother's cooking. Because I remembered your grandmother's 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 recipe. Or something close to it." Bora looked down at her hands. "There are only 37 keepers left in the entire galaxy. The corporations have been hunting us for decades. If they capture us all, an entire history of galactic cuisine dies. Thousands of cultures, millions of recipes, all lost forever. Is that why you tested me that first day? The thing about being too chubby to be loved?" Bora nodded. "I needed to know what kind of person you were. If you judged me by my appearance, you'd judge my people the same way. But you didn't. You saw past the surface to what mattered." She met his eyes. "I'm trusting you with this because I think you understand what's really at stake. This isn't just about saving Quilvans. It's about preserving memory itself." "Show me," Jinho said. "Show me what you can do." They went to the ship's small kitchen. Bora pulled out basic ration packs and some preserved ingredients from storage. She worked quietly, her movements precise and purposeful, occasionally pausing with her eyes closed as if listening to something only she could hear. 40 minutes later, she placed a dish in front of Jinho. It looked simple, just rice and vegetables and a rich brown sauce. But when he tasted it, his throat went tight and his eyes burned with sudden tears. "This is from my grandmother's village," he said hoarsely. "This exact recipe. She used to make it for me when I was a kid." "How did you know?" "I didn't know which specific recipe would matter to you," Bora said gently. "But I accessed memories of Earth, of Korea, of home cooking made with love. I found this one in the memories and it felt right. The emotions attached to it were strong, even through centuries of genetic transfer." Jinho couldn't speak. He just ate, and each bite was a memory, a connection to a past he thought he'd lost forever. When he finished, he looked at Bora with new understanding. "The corporations don't just want to study you. They want to own this, to patent genetic memory and sell it back to people as a product. Yes, and in the process, they'll destroy us. The extraction process the research proposal mentioned, it's not just deadly. It's designed to break down our genetic structure completely. They'll turn us into chemical components and sell us as flavor enhancers." Her voice was bitter. "We'll become ingredients in our own food." "That's not going to happen." "How can you be sure?" "There are billions of them and only a few dozen of us. Because humans are really good at being stubborn about things that matter." Jinho reached across the table and took her hand. "And you matter, Bora. Not because of what you can do or what your genes are worth, because of who you are. You're kind and talented and you care about people. That's worth protecting, even if it means fighting corporations forever? Especially then. He squeezed her hand. Besides, I've got a plan. Oh no. It's a good plan, Jinho protested. Your last plan involved turning a space station into a bomb. And it worked, didn't it? He grinned. But seriously, I've been thinking. The corporations are winning because they control information. They can hide what they're doing, target specific individuals, operate in the shadows. But what if we take that away from them? What if we make what you can do public knowledge? Bora frowned. I don't understand. Right now, the corporations see Quilvans as resources to exploit. But what if the rest of the galaxy saw you as teachers? What if we set up places where keepers of tastes could share their knowledge freely? Restaurants, cooking schools, cultural centers. Make your abilities common knowledge instead of a secret worth stealing. That would make us more visible, more vulnerable, or it would make you too valuable to harm. If thousands of people across dozens of systems are learning from you, if entire communities are depending on Quilvan teachers to preserve their own culinary heritage, then attacking you becomes politically impossible. Jinho leaned forward, warming to his idea. Humans love food. We bond over it. We use it to preserve culture. We get emotional about recipes from our childhood. If we can show other species that Quilvans can do the same for them, give them back tastes they thought they'd lost, you won't need protection. You'll have allies everywhere. Bora stared at him. That's actually brilliant. And completely insane. Those aren't mutually exclusive. It would take years to set up, resources we don't have, and we'd be exposing ourselves to danger every day. Yeah, Jinho admitted. But what's the alternative? Hiding forever? Letting the corporations hunt you down one by one? At least this way you're living instead of just surviving. Bora was quiet for a long time, her tea cooling in her hands. Finally she said, I'd need help. Keepers of taste to teach, safe locations to work from, protection for our students and ourselves. You've got 43 human ships following us right now, full of people who are already committed to protecting Quilvans. I bet most of them would be willing to help set up schools and restaurants. And I bet once word spreads about what you can do, you'll have more volunteers than you know what to do with. Why are you doing this? Bora asked softly. You could have fixed my ship and sent me on my way. Instead, you've made yourself a target for some of the most powerful corporations in the galaxy. Why? Jinho thought about his answer carefully. When I was a kid, my grandmother taught me that food is love made visible. Every meal she made was a gift, a way of saying I matter, I'm valued, I'm home. You do the same thing. Every dish you make is an act of love and preservation. That's worth protecting. That's worth fighting for. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. I wish you could have met her. In a way I have, Bora smiled. Her recipes live in my genetic memory now. Through her descendants' memories, through the meals that mattered to his family. She's part of the great chain of food and love that connects all species who eat together. She would have loved that idea, Jinho said. His throat was tight again. And she would have loved you. Bora stood up and moved around the table. Before Jinho could react, she hugged him, her furry arms warm and strong around his shoulders. He hugged her back, and for a moment they just stood there in the small kitchen while the ship traveled through hyperspace toward an uncertain future. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for protecting me, for helping me remember that I'm not too chubby to be loved. You were never too chubby, Jinho said firmly. You're perfect exactly as you are, and anyone who can't see that is an idiot. She laughed, pulling back to look at him. I think I might be falling in love with you. Jinho's heart skipped. That's convenient, because I think I've been falling for you since that first breakfast. Really, I was so nervous that day. You made me cry with food. Pretty sure that's when I knew you were special. They stood close together, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Bora stretched up on her toes and kissed him gently. It was soft and sweet and tasted like tea and hope. When they pulled apart, Jinho was grinning like an idiot. So we're doing this? Fighting corporations, preserving cultures, falling in love. Apparently so, Bora said. Humans and their pack-bonding instincts. You're going to get me killed. Or we're going to change the galaxy. Or both. Yeah, Jinho agreed happily. Probably both.